Hello, everyone, and welcome to the landing party. We have a special episode for you today as we're going to be discussing some of the information that came out over the last few days from San Diego Comic-Con, including the newest trailer for Star Trek Picard, the news surrounding Season 3 of Star Trek Discovery, and what we know about Lower Decks. Kirk Lyon. Joining me tonight is our resident Trek-spert, Rick. How's it going, sir?
Kapla!
Co-host
Going
of
well.
Wait You've Never Seen, Virginia.
Hello.
And the co-host of the Prime Direction, the host of the Prime Direction, Scott Madison. How's it going?
What the hell are you doing here, Sean? Saving the galaxy?
Yes. I'm trying. Okay, so before we talk about the thing that we all want to talk about, which is the Picard trailer, let's go ahead and discuss what we know about Discovery, and we'll talk a little bit about Lower Decks and short treks and stuff like that. So I have a quote here from an article that I read while I was looking at stories for this, but executive producer Alex Kurtzman was quick to explain that despite the series now being set further in the future than any other Trek series ever, 1,000 years, they are going to honor the canon. He said there will be things you recognize, things you don't, and while they're shaking things up, they aren't erasing anything. Don't worry, he said, it will still be Star Trek, and it will always be Star Trek the way Gene Roddenberry wanted it.
And those
Hasn't
haters
been
can
Star
suck
Trek
it.
the way Gene Roddenberry wanted it for 30 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that, by the way.
I mean, I don't want to disparage the man's memory because he brought us something that we all love and everything, but Star Trek The Next Generation got good after he wasn't working on it anymore.
That's a discussion for another show.
But there's going to be a new character. David, is it Ahala? David Ahala or David Ajala? Anyway, he plays Manchester Black on Supergirl, and he's going to be joining the cast as a character named Book. He is described as mischievous, and he breaks the rules a little bit.
Gee, we've never seen that on Star
He'll
Trek.
fit right in.
But the character's name is Book, and that just makes me think of Firefly.
Yeah.
So
Well, maybe it's an homage.
Oh,
this
yeah.
is going to be.
He doesn't have as much hair, so he won't be scaring River.
They obviously have to bring in a regular character that's a character from the future that's going to be the person that's going to give us all this disposition of, this is who these people are and this is who these people are, and explain.
Like he's the Neelix of the show?
He has to
I
explain.
was just
Yeah.
going to say that.
He has to explain things. But and Sonequa Martin Green said at Comic-Con that Discovery did not come out at Terra Elysium like they planned, but they come out at a new planet that nobody knows anything about. So that's interesting. They
that has me a little bit worried.
Why is that?
Just because I hope they're not going to go first season Lost in Space and have like the ship be on one planet for the whole season.
I don't.
The way they've been talking about it, it's just been catching a little whiff of that. And I'm probably wrong.
I think it's just going to be a one episode thing because that's probably where they're going to pick this character up at. And I think it's just going to be a device to get him on the ship.
Yeah, I've got to find the. I don't have it on hand. I've got to find the quote that gave me that impression and investigate it more. But I don't want. I don't want a series where they're on one planet for the whole, for even more than 2 episodes. A couple is fine, but
I don't think they're going to be doing Lost in Space because we know that they went to the Beta Quadrant because she sent that.
No. I'm not saying them being lost. I'm just saying if the first season of Lost in Space, they crashed on a planet and stayed there. They stayed on one planet. Mm-hmm. And then they realized that wasn't working, and they started sending and then it got stupid. But that's a whole other discussion.
If anything, it wouldn't surprise me if they show up and they're stuck on a planet they were not expecting to find. It's probably going to be maybe 2 episodes, because with them bringing in directors to do 2 episodes at a time, then it wouldn't surprise me if it's going to either loosely or explicitly hew towards 2 episode arcs.
Are they doing that with this? I know they're doing that with Picard. Are they doing that with Discovery as well?
Oh, well, I suppose I might be getting it mixed up. I might have
Yeah,
been
I think
thinking of
that's
the
a
directorial
Picard
setup for
thing, but
Picard.
yeah, I haven't heard, and
Oops.
I wouldn't be surprised. It would not surprise me if they think that formula works, that they would stick with it on all of their stuff. But I don't know.
If nothing else, if they're going to be stuck on a planet for more than an episode, I suppose it's possible that they do it for like the first, either the first handful of episodes or the first half of the season. Because they've done a pretty decent job of separating their seasons, the first and second, into this is what happens in the first half, and then there's the break, then we move on to the second half, and they're kind of separate stories that put them together and they make the season story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
now.
Go ahead.
Is it just me, or and maybe it's just the publicity shots, but and maybe it's never mind. Are Sneakwa's outfits getting tighter and tighter every season?
I don't think they could. I don't think any of them's outfits could get a whole lot tighter there.
It's like there's one shot
uniforms.
of her in like this blue jumpsuit, and it's like they had to spray paint it onto her.
Oh, that's the undersuit for the time suit.
The angel.
Yeah. Suit, No, it's blue, but
yeah,
it's the under part that she wears underneath. Yeah.
And it's just like, do we really have to go there for this show? I don't think it needs that.
I think that's just a byproduct of what she was wearing before, because she and Spock are in the cargo bay. They have the time suit. It's built. It's ready for her to put on. She's wearing that. She's wearing that body stocking before she steps into the mechanics of the time suit. So she gets to the planet, time suit either breaks apart or she takes it off, and that's what she has underneath, and then she puts on the native clothing over top of it, like what Book is wearing.
And that's pretty much all that they've got. Now I've seen a lot of people online talking about, I wonder how they're going to get back, and like, I don't think they're going back.
To get back.
They're not.
I think this is it. I think this is at least for the foreseeable future. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen 2-3 seasons down the road, but for the foreseeable future, I think this is where the show is going to be. And people are just assuming, oh, they have to go back, or what? They don't have to go back. I mean, they, of course, if you listen to our coverage of the last episode, they really didn't have to go in the first place.
Yeah,
that's true.
I think, especially with how well they, and some people, especially the haters, would disagree, they did it well, but they took great pains to set up the end of season 2 to explain this is why you've never heard of the Discovery or any of its crew in any of the other Star Trek that you've ever seen, because they're not coming back. If they leave the 32nd, 3rd century, if they leave that new time frame that they're in, they're not going back to the Discovery era that we were in the first 2 seasons. I think maybe it'd be interesting if after 2 seasons in the far future, if they find a way to travel back in time, let them show up at the Hobus Supernova just for kicks.
Well, okay.
Or go further into the future.
We do know that Empress Giorgio has to go back because she's going to be fronting the Section 31 show.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we had this when we did our Starbase episode about about Discovery, and one of my co-hosts, who was a very smart guy, thought the same thing. He was like, how are they getting back? Are we going to be doing a Voyager kind of thing? And I'm like, no, they never intend to come back. This was never, and somewhere there's a disconnect, because to me, it was very clear that this was not going to be Voyager. This was not going to be Gilligan's Island in space again. They were clearly voluntarily going into the future with no intention of coming back. But people seem to think that they're going to be trying to get back all the time. And that I don't know. Did I miss something?
No, it's just it's a thing about time travel shows and movies in general, is whenever you're traveling to another time, the plot is that you're trying to get back, or you're going to try to change something.
And they're assuming.
They're just assuming.
Oh
that
yeah,
this is
people.
an arc.
Yeah, they're stuck on the status quo. They figure, well, this show started here. This is where we'll have to eventually continue. So they'll come back and continue what they were doing before. And they were not paying close enough attention, as you said, when it was made very clear at the end of season 2 that this was a one-way trip, and they all knew it.
Yeah.
I have to point out that Rick, what you said a minute ago about Giorgio has to come back. That is true. That is what they have told us. But they also told us that Ash and Vogue were played by 2 different actors, and they weren't. So there is always the possibility that the announcement that she's going to be on the Section 31 show could be subterfuge, and she's not. She's going to stay on Discovery until whenever. And Ash is going to be
Section 31 of the future.
Or Ash is going to be the head of the Section 31 show or something like that. Or they may bring on a different captain altogether. I don't know.
I
don't think they're going to. I mean, you're right. You're right. You know, especially with Alex Kurtzman in charge. You know, he's 1 degree of separation. Very quiet. I'm hunting Tweckies. You know, he's part of J.J. Abrams' cadre. So and the only way to tell Abrams is lying is when his mouth is moving.
Yeah.
But I don't think they'd make such a big deal about Michelle Yeoh fronting the series if they weren't really planning on bringing her back.
Well, it would be a simple enough move considering who she is as a character. They can let her, grow and start caring about other people and, acting in altruistic ways, even if it's just, varying degrees of altruism. But get that character to a point where she is tired of being in the future. So, you know what? This isn't who I am. Being here with you people requires a degree of selflessness that I just don't have in me. And I just found a method of time travel over here, and I have no compunctions with screwing all you guys and leaving you here in the future while I go back to where we came from, which she does.
I'm going home.
Which she does, and then she forms or joins section, not forms, it's already formed, but then she joins and re-envisions Section 31 into the very covert organization that we knew from Deep Space Nine, because it seems very overt in Discovery. Section 31 is not exactly working under the radar. So I have to assume that when they do a Section 31 series with Michelle Yeoh as Empress Georgiou working in Section 31, she's got to be the one who turns it into a covert organization that answers to no one.
Yeah, I mean, it's my theory that her and the Discovery are going to get sent back to at least back to closer to regular time, and Discovery is going to. That's how the Discovery becomes sentient, because Discovery is going to kind of hide out or something for 1,000 years until it catches back up with the crew. They'll get their ship back, but when they get their ship back, it'll be sentient. So
that's also a fair point, because they still haven't laid out exactly how. Was it Zora? Is that? Yeah. If the entire ship traveled to the future at the end of season 2, then that kind of precludes the possibility of the ship being set someplace in the 23rd century to wait for them. So
we don't know that's when Calypso took place. We just know that Discovery's been alone for 1,000 years.
Fair enough. So you think Calypso might be taking place 2,000 years out from Discovery and TOS and all that?
I have no theory on that. All we know.
No, just if it's a possibility.
It is yeah. Or it could have been thrown 10,000 years in the past. We don't know. What we do know about Calypso is that Michael Chabon. Is it Michael?
Sounds right.
Yeah, I say Chabon.
Yeah. Chabon. His desire was to write a short trek that was 1,000 years in the future. What that means for real, is vague enough that it could be anything.
Yeah.
And what his intentions were versus what we see. Wine. What his intentions were versus what we saw on screen are two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
All we know for sure is that the Discovery says that she's been alone for 1,000 years. That's a pretty vague number, and we're used to computers being the last crew member left 900, 400, 4,600, whatever. We're used to a lot more precision from a computer. This computer has become sentient and is talking in vague generalities. We don't know if the Discovery crew parked her in a nebula and buggered off for some reason and said, we'll be right back, and then didn't come back for 1,000 years. Or, like you said, did the crew get off and the ship got punted back 1,000 years and had to wait to catch up to them? Or, there are so many possibilities for this. I think that limiting it at this point with the information we have is tricky at best.
Speaking of short treks, there are 6 new short treks coming this fall.
They look awesome.
3 of them are about Pike, Spock, and Number One on the Enterprise. One of them shows Pike in some sort of prison, which would be interesting. 2 of them are going to be animated, though they said that they won't be done in the animation style of either Lower Decks or the Nickelodeon series. It's going to be something completely different. They could be Discovery related, as far as we know. Maybe it's Discovery the animated series or something like that. I don't know. And also the last one that they show will be a prequel for Picard, and is going to give a sense of what happened to him 15 some odd years ago before we joined the series.
I think your numbers are a little off, because there are at least 2 live action Pike Number One Spock short treks, because one of them is Spock and Number One stuck in a turbo lift.
That's what I said. There's 3 of them. There's 3 that are about.
But you
Pike,
said 2
Spock,
were animated.
No, there are 3 Pike, Spock, and Number One short treks. There are 2 animated short treks.
Oh, okay.
And then there's a Picard prequel short trek.
Right, gotcha.
So, and one of them, now I know it may be the episode that they showed where Spike, Pike and Spock kind of do this Tuvix thing and they become Spike. That'll be interesting. No, they have one where Spock and Number One are trapped in the turbo lift. That may be the one titled Q&A, but
it is.
Star Trek
it was
titles
confirmed on stage. It was confirmed on stage.
Okay, well, Star Trek titles that have Q in them usually have a special meaning. So
I don't think we'll see Q. I
not
really don't.
John Delancey. Not John Delancey. I don't think John Delancey is going to be on the show.
There's
I'd
no
love to
point to
see
bringing
John
Q back if
Delancey.
it's not John Delancey.
Yeah, I agree.
You can
John
have
Delancey or nothing.
Yeah, you can have him and then, another Q played by someone else, sure, but you don't
Yeah.
have Qs just showing up without John Delancey's Q. And like I said, they were on stage in Hall H when talking about the Spock and Number One short trek in the turbo lift, and they did confirm that was Q&A.
I'm just saying they should have called it something else.
I guarantee you, if they were bringing John Delancey in, they would have brought him out at Comic-Con, because
That's a good point.
that would be a publicity coup, like what we're about to talk about.
Well, they did kind of hint.
We still got Star Trek Las Vegas, so it's not too late for them to say, oh, by the way, here's Q.
They have a long history of dropping their big bombs on San Diego Comic-Con and totally ignoring STLV when it comes to big announcements.
Mhm.
Well, no, Star Trek Las Vegas last year is where they announced Picard.
But they wanted to announce it at San Diego Comic-Con, but because some contracts were still held up, they couldn't do it. So they delayed it until Vegas.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Well,
In fact, it's been frustratingly annoying how STLV has been, with the exception of the Picard announcement, almost devoid of any big announcements from CBS.
Yeah,
or Paramount.
they use the event to revel in the Trek fandom and celebrate IDIC and celebrate loving Star Trek and celebrate the cosplay and celebrate the
$150 photo ops.
Yeah, the celebrities and just the pure event nature of This is where we come celebrate Star Trek. It's the biggest convention ever. They don't tend to use it for big announcements. They should, but they don't.
Yeah. They also Alex Kurtzman said to the audience, "So, do you guys want a Pike series?" And everybody cheered, and he said, "Okay, we'll think about it."
Yeah.
And
I still don't
that
think it's
is
going to happen.
that's where I think this whole bit about Star Trek Las Vegas not being a staging ground for announcements might be starting to change. I think it's possible. This is a theory.
Oh, it's definitely possible. I mean, anything's possible.
Because they had to delay the announcement of Picard from San Diego to Las Vegas last year. And it was big news. Everyone lost their goddamn minds. I think they might have said, you know what? This kind of worked. Let's make sure we have one big announcement for Vegas. We can announce whatever we want at San Diego, but let's make sure we have one announcement for Vegas. And with him asking that question in San Diego, it makes me think that they might show up to Las Vegas and say, we're announcing a series starring Pike and Spock in number one.
Yeah, and if it happens, I don't think that we'll see the actual show for at least 3 or 4 years. But
Yeah.
I mean, they announced Section 31 like over a year ago, and it's not going to come out until they're not even going to start filming it until after season 3 of Discovery is done.
Right.
So
Now, if they announced that the Section 31 show is no longer happening, but they are going to do a Pike Enterprise show, I'd be totally down with that.
Yeah. Now they did. I mean, they mentioned the 31 show. They didn't really make any announcements about it. I mean, it's still on the schedule. They did make some announcements about Lower Decks. So Lower Decks will be a half-hour animated show from Mike McMahon, who writes for Rick and Morty, and it will be about a group of 4 ensigns on what is described as a not important ship in Starfleet, the USS Cerritos, a California-class ship. And it will take place post Nemesis. That surprised me because I really thought that this show was going to take place in the TOS era, but it's going to take place after the Next Generation. It's going to have, so the character names are, we got Beckett Mariner, who is good at being in Starfleet but cares more about skateboarding than working, and so she never gets promoted. Brad Boimler is book smart but way too in his head and nervous. Tendi is a super enthusiastic medical officer who starts the show on her first day in Starfleet, and Rutherford, who is compared to Geordi LaForge, except that he can never get anything done or solved. Plus, he just had his cyborg eye put in, so he's still dealing with that. And there's also a bridge crew that thinks that they're the stars of the show, but they're not. So, I mean, there will be a captain and a first officer. There'll be characters on the show, but they won't be the main cast. So.
I like that the doctor's occasion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's going to be, I mean, I think it's going to be a fun show. And they were quickly pointing out that this will not be poking fun at Star Trek. It's going to be, it's part of Star Trek, so it's going to get its humor from its characters, kind of like The Simpsons. And it is a good place for people that aren't really Star Trek fans to dive in, but it's going to be filled with references that only invested fans will really get. So, that's it. They show some pictures of the characters and stuff like that. I am a Rick and Morty fan. I think that it is a really smart sci-fi. I don't want to call it a parody sci-fi because I mean it's got some really good sci-fi stories. It's just that it's filled with a lot of pretty dark humor. I don't think that this show is going to be dark. I think it's going to be kind of lighthearted and all that. But I'll be interested to see what they do with actual Star Trek.
If it's like Rick and Morty in any way, it's probably going to be their ability to take well-known, familiar sci-fi tropes, which we see all the time in Rick and Morty. But they will deconstruct those tropes and examine them from an angle that you normally don't see it from. Rick and Morty has a great ability to take something that you see all the time in science fiction, but take a step to the right and then turn a little bit and then look at it from the bottom. And then you see like the dark side of that particular trope, the things that don't normally have to deal with in sci-fi movies. Like the heroes leave and they continue with their lives, but stay where they were in that alternate universe in that sci-fi movie, and you'll see they really messed things up and they
Yeah.
just walked away. And that's the sort of thing Rick and Morty shows you. I don't think they're going to be showing us the exact same thing in Star Trek, but they're going to find the Star Trek tropes, the common story elements, the common tech elements, and they're going to show it to us from a slightly different angle from the people who work the lower decks. It's like, yeah, yeah, guys, I understand that you love the biofilter because it definitely helps you out with not bringing stuff on board, but where does all that stuff go? We have to deal with that. We're going to see the people in the lower decks who have to deal with like the refuse from the biofilter. That's not
Right.
how the biofilter works, but that's an example. That's what they're going to be showing us is this is the hidden side of Star Trek that you don't see. It's not, scary and dark and disturbing. It's going to be hilarious.
Yeah. And they didn't say anything about how many episodes they were going to have in the season or anything like that. Like I said, it's a 30-minute show, so they could do 20 episodes or whatever. But I'm thinking the first season it'll probably just be like a 10-episode season or something like that. But
Yeah.
And that's in 2020, right?
yes, it comes out next fall, I think. Yeah.
I also find it interesting with Lower Decks that the uniform design for that show, it takes place post Nemesis,
Mm-hmm.
but based on their uniforms, apparently, Starfleet has decided, you know what, the black uniform with the gray shoulders and the division color underneath, it's been okay, but we're going to go ahead and jump back about 7 to 10 years and go back to the style of the colors across the entire shoulder and across the side, but they're also adding the collar with the flap that comes over and then down the front. And this is just for the YouTube people that are watching. I'm gesturing to my clothes. So sorry, audio people, you don't know what I'm talking about. But a chest flap and a button in the collar, which is very reminiscent of the uniforms that they designed for Star Trek Generations, the first TNG movie.
Mm-hmm.
They designed them and they made them and they were ready to go, but they decided not to use them in filming. So they literally stole uniforms from the DS9 set and used those. Jonathan Frakes was wearing Avery Brooks's costume in Generations. But those uniforms did make it to the toys, the Playmates line of action figures. They had those original flap design uniforms that never end up getting used. And they're on a shelf right over there. And it looks like they remember that costume design and they're incorporating that into Lower Decks, which I just think is very clever.
Maybe they've just been on a deep space mission and haven't gotten the updated uniforms yet.
Well, it
see.
is a non-important ship.
Yeah, the USS Cerritos California class starship.
Getting the hand-me-downs of the rest of the Federation.
Why California class? That's just strange to me.
I just looked it up while we were talking. I can't find a picture of it.
I don't think they released one.
That tells me that they're creating a new class for the show. They're not using one we've already seen.
Okay, so the moment we've all been waiting for. There was a huge panel that had Patrick Stewart and the cast of Picard on it. They talked about a lot of stuff. They unveiled the new trailer that finally shows us a little bit of the show Out of the Vineyard. The trailer answered some questions and it raised a few more. Virginia, what'd you think about this trailer?
I loved it. I think it looks interesting. I'm intrigued. I want to know who that woman is. It looks like I had thought it would be more vineyard based, but it looks like he's going to be adventuring out, so that's pretty awesome. Yeah, I really liked it, and I can't wait to see what they've come up with.
Scott?
So a little bit of background. I think I might have done some light hinting at this in some previous episodes, but I haven't talked a lot about it. Personal life wise, there's a lot going on over here, and it hasn't been the best past few months. So that can make a person a little shaky, a little fragile. So that might be why I watched that trailer for the first time about halfway through, just watching the character of Captain Picard walking around, existing, this character that I grew up with for those 7 seasons and their movies, to see him back in new story. I got my fist up to my mouth and I'm just kind of, pensively watching. And then we get to the end of the trailer. You see the cup of Earl Grey, you see the cards, you see Picard say his line, and then you see one more character who says one more thing. And I straight up lost it. I fell apart at the end of the trailer because it was essentially everything that I was hoping that a return to these characters would be from what they presented in the trailer. I could not be more excited to watch it. And I have gone back and viewed the trailer at least a half dozen times since then. I know many people have watched it many more times than that, but I wanted to, be able to function in the real world, so I didn't overdo it. Very exciting. Lots of questions, lots of mystery, but enough to feed the theory monster that is me. And I've got a few.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a couple. Rick, what'd you think when you saw it?
It's all right.
It's okay.
Okay, TNG is not TNG is not my Star Trek. I love TNG, not disparaging it, but TOS is my Star Trek. So I wasn't expecting to be overly emotional about this episode or about this trailer. And while my response was not as profound as Scott's, are we spoiling?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Okay.
we're assuming that everyone's seen the trailer 12
Okay.
times. I mean,
I was playing it safe, so I didn't.
When 7 of 9 showed up,
yeah,
I got a little choked up. Voyager's not my favorite show, but I really think Jerry Ryan was way more than they ever expected she would be. And I think 7 of 9 is one of the greatest Star Trek characters. So bringing her in is fantastic. Before we knew anything about the show, I was kind of in the I don't want to see anyone else but Picard. But bringing in 7 of 9, I think was a wonderful, out of left field, no one saw it coming kind of thing. Also bringing in Hugh. I never really liked the whole Hugh storyline, but whatever. Jonathan Del Arco, is that his name?
something like that. Yeah,
Something like that. Yeah. But if we're going down a Borg road, which kind of makes sense, if we're doing the Borg and the Romulans, hopefully they will clear up the Nova threatening to destroy the universe BS from the Kelvin movies, and they'll just say, okay, it destroyed Romulus and that was it because it was just one fucking Nova.
Well, it's because Spock stopped it. That's why it only destroyed
Ron. Did we see Nero in that trailer?
No,
I
don't know.
I understand why you would think that. He's the guy on the floor, right?
Yeah, I was like, is that Nero?
I am like 99% certain that was not Nero, because I don't think they would bring Eric Bana in to play in this when it takes place 20 years after his character went back in time.
But it might have been a flashback.
I think.
I suppose maybe, but I think it's more likely that he is just a bald Romulan, because we're going to be dealing with Romulan refugees in this show.
He may have been part of that same sect that did the tattoos and everything, or something like that.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Virginia?
Oh, just that I think I read somewhere that it was like a step back to, what you're just saying, where they have like the tattoos and stuff, that was one of the styles for the Romulans they were going to go for, but I don't remember where I read that.
Okay. But be that as it may, I was way more excited after watching this trailer than I expected to be. And I got quite emotional as well. The only problem I have with it And it's not a problem with the trailer. It's not a problem with the writing or the acting or anything. Is this just Patrick Stewart is older than I want him to be? So
Time marches on.
I know, yeah. And so I mean, the dude's in his 70s, and he sounds like he's in his 70s.
Picard
and-
is in his 90s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you look at the timeline, you do the math, he's going to be, and we know people live longer in the Star Trek universe, and that's fine. Yeah. It's just I'm looking forward to it, but my biggest problem with the new Star Wars movies is seeing Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford being old, because I'm freaking old, but in my memory, in my mind, they're in their 20s still, and they're not. And so seeing Patrick Stewart being old on screen is going to be difficult.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we've seen him old on screen. I mean, Logan just came out a couple of years ago, so
yeah, and that wasn't an easy ride either. That was, I mean, that movie was very intentionally a kick to the gut.
Yeah.
And it was a very well-made kick to the gut, but it was still, you don't want to see your virile dad as, geriatric. And, Patrick Stewart's only 20 years or so older than me. So it's a little hard to deal with, but I'm looking forward to it. I will watch every second of it. I'm very excited about it. The trailers are amazing. The characters look really cool. The story looks great. And, we've been wondering since 2009 what the after effects of that supernova and the destruction of Romulus were in the prime timeline. So now we get to see it. Yeah. And I'm very, very psyched about it.
So some of the things that we saw, so Picard's going to meet a young woman with some extraordinary fighting skills, and she tells him that she feels safe with him. And we see him tell an admiral that if she is who he thinks she is, then she's in a lot of danger. And right at the very beginning of the trailer, they pull a drawer open and we see an android disassembled. It's not Data, because Data's body was destroyed, right?
It'd be B4.
It's probably B4.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's talking about how, Data gave his life for me and all that kind of, so all of that's going to kind of play into it. Scott, you got a theory of who you think the woman is?
Well, the question that I had was, well, I do have a theory on who the woman is, and I'll get to that in a moment. But the admiral that we saw Picard talking to, is it just me, or did that really look like Helen Mirren? Is that Helen Mirren?
It just looked like an old lady to me.
I thought it really looked like Helen
Mirren
Mirren.
Trying to say that it's Janeway, but I looked at a picture, a still shot. It's very obviously not Janeway.
Yeah, no way. I've seen Kate Mulgrew on Orange Is the New Black. That is not Kate Mulgrew.
Yeah.
But I also I cannot bring myself to freeze frame on this trailer. If it's playing, I have to watch it.
Yeah.
I can't stop for anything, so I haven't been able to freeze frame to see who that admiral is. Now the brunette that comes to Picard saying, everything I know says that I'm safe with you. There are a lot of different options on who it could be. A lot of people are speculating that it's a long lost unknown daughter of Locutus and the Borg Queen.
Oh, for Christ's sake!
Yeah.
Wow.
I think
I have not heard that one.
I think that's a little odd. But similar to that, it could be various permutations of any of the following elements. It could be maybe not like a child, but a construct that borrows elements of Picard and of the Borg Queen. So maybe not like an actual, hey, between the scenes when we didn't see it, they got together and made a kid. No, but the Borg could have built a kid using memory engrams and DNA that they collected from Picard when he was assimilated, along with the consciousness, quote unquote, of the Borg Queen, and made a new one, and perhaps her purpose is to rebuild the collective because maybe they've been destroyed or decimated. Who knows? It could be one of my theories is, especially with bringing in the character of Data, probably not as like a solid character through a lot of it. He's probably going to show up very briefly, but they're reminding us that he's there, that he's around. He was also captured by the Borg. It would have been a very simple matter for the Borg to download Data's positronic net, within which he stored Lal. So this girl.
Kurtzman said that it's not Lal.
Oh, did he say that?
Womp womp.
Yeah.
I have not been able to make the time to go back and watch the entire panel for any of this stuff. So I've been
I
just
haven't
going on
watched
the-
it
on the
either, but
report.
I saw
I watched the panel. They didn't say that in the panel that I watched, but they could have released it in some press release stuff afterward or something.
Yeah, and there've been scores of interviews that they've done before and after the panel. So Rick, if you heard Kurtzman say in any way that it's not Lal, then
it's
then
not
I'll
Lal. She's
buy
not Lal.
that. But I think it's more than likely that she is a product of the Borg in some form, one way or another.
So we also see a Borg cube, and we see Seven of Nine, played by Jerry Ryan, asking Picard what the hell he's doing, and Picard, and she is much more human than she was the last time we saw her. You know, she's not acting Borgified. She's not acting robotic at all. You know, she's smiling and all of that. So the last 20 some odd years have been kind to 7 of 9, I guess.
Which raises the question: is that 7 of 9, or is it Annika Hansen?
Yes.
Well, I mean, she's got the implant still on her face there. The cortical stimulant. What is it? What's that thing called? The cortical whatever.
We never. Yeah, the Borg thingy.
Yeah,
no, it's she's both. I think that what we're going to see is 7 of 9 finally not being 7 of 9 and being Annika Hansen, but you know, she's still 7 of 9.
Yeah, she still was 7 of 9, but that's the question I'm asking: is she walking around, you know, 20 years later now, still being called 7 of 9? Is she Annika 7? Is she 7 Hansen? Is she gone back to just, you know, presenting herself and being referred to as Annika Hansen, just with a very interesting history to her life where she was 7 of 9 for a while?
They call her Annie, and she hates sand.
It's rough and it's coarse and it gets everywhere.
At the very end of the trailer, we see Picard playing cards, and he says, I don't want the game to end. And pan away, and we see Data sitting there. And he says, I can see that, Captain. For one thing, he calls him Captain. That's the first clue that I had that it's Data, but it's not Data. You know, he's playing cards with a hologram of Data because he misses his friend or whatever.
You got to hold you up there. Series finale, TNG, All Good Things, takes place in the future. Picard has gone from being a captain to at least an ambassador, probably an admiral as well. And now he's retired. Everyone still calls him captain.
Well, yeah, but the girl in the teaser trailer very specifically called him admiral. So that was his last rank. I would think. I know he called him captain in that episode, but I would think that if Data were there, he would call him by the rank that he was last known to be. But I don't know.
I'm thinking holographic Data.
I'm thinking it's going to be. Yeah. This is a cameo. He's going to be in the first episode before Picard leaves the vineyard to go off on an adventure. He's having breakfast with Data or whatever, and Data. He looked good. I mean, it looked passable. I think that it is only going to be in this one episode because I don't think that it's something that they can make look good for a whole season. Mm-hmm. You know, the de-aging that they did on him or whatever, heavy makeup. His cheeks were a little puffy, but you know, he's 60 something. So
right. I think that what we saw there was the body of B4 reconstructed, and the consciousness of Data, which had been downloaded to it in Nemesis, has been brought to the surface, and it gives Picard a chance to share a cup of tea and a game of cards with his old friend who has been gone these 2 decades, a chance for him to say goodbye, perhaps a chance for all of them to say goodbye, because for all we know, out of frame, sitting at that same table, Riker and Troy might be sitting there as well. They might all be together celebrating Captain Picard Day, which we saw the banner for, as a family one last time before Data's positronic brain, who knows, depolarizes, loses cohesion, and is lost forever. They might say, hey, we got this body of B4, but his brain is going. If you want to try to resurrect Data, now's your last chance. So they do it. And they have a card game and a cup of tea and a meal and a conversation. And then they say goodbye to Data.
I think you're way darker than they are.
I think my theory is the banner is a vision. He's having a dream or something. I think that Data is. I don't think he's on the holodeck. I think he's actually sitting in the vineyard, but I think that we're going to see that some of the holographic technology has advanced. I mean, obviously the Doctor didn't have to be in the holodeck all the time. So holographic technology has advanced to where you can sit outside with a holographic character. And that's, it may have, I mean, he may have been able to get Data's memories from B4 and load them into a hologram. And he's talking to Data, but it's not Data's body. It's a holographic body. But that's, I mean, that's all, God. I mean,
well, we also know
Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis are going to be in at least one episode. So
it's been announced that Riker and Troy are going to be involved in the series.
Yeah.
But they just
I don't think they've filmed that episode yet. I think that's going to be towards the end of the season. They've already made 6 episodes. They're making 10. And to hear the way Patrick Stewart was talking in the panel, Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis episode had not been filmed yet, but it was going to be in the next few days. So,
and Frakes is directing 2 or 4 episodes.
2. He's recording He is directing episodes 2 and 3. No, 3 and 4 of the series.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
And I like all of the younger characters. They look like it's going to be a lot of fun. You know, we've got the Romulan that everybody's calling Legolas.
Yeah, he looks a lot like him.
You know, it's interesting that they have gone with, you know, we've got Picard, who's old as dirt, and they're surrounding him with really, really, really young people. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I might have had bigger reservations about it, except that, you know, Patrick Stewart has been very, very clear for the past. When did Nemesis? When was the end? When was Nemesis?
02.
02?
Yeah.
That late? That far? Okay.
Yeah.
You know, Stewart has been very clear since Nemesis that he's done with Picard. You know, he had no desire to revisit the character. He felt he had done everything he could. The fact that he's coming back now when he doesn't need to, this is not, you know, someone who hasn't worked for 15 years trying to grab some past glory. Patrick Stewart is very comfortable and had no need to put on a Starfleet uniform again and get back in front of that camera.
Yeah.
But they came to him with a story that was good enough that intrigued him. You know, I don't like to get caught in the trap of if so-and-so is in it, it's going to be good because aliens. You know? But I think Patrick Stewart is, you know, the man started in the Royal Shakespeare Company, and then during his time in Star Trek was met with a lot of "What the hell are you doing, Patrick? You used to do real stuff." He brought that importance and that gravitas to Star Trek. I don't think the Next Generation would have lasted 7 seasons without Patrick Stewart and as the linchpin of it.
Mhm.
And if he thinks this story is good enough to come back for, then I'm all in. I trust
Yeah.
Patrick Stewart. I trust his judgment. Alex Kurtzman, I have a lot of problems with the JJ movies. You all know that. It's no secret. I enjoyed aspects of them, but I have huge problems with them. And Alex Kurtzman comes from that pedigree. But if Stewart is on board and he's excited about it, I'm definitely looking forward to what they have to offer.
Me too. But it's not coming until 2020. And they've been saying late 2019 until now, but it's probably going to be early 2020, like January, because they just started filming Discovery. So Discovery may not come out until the fall of 2020. I don't know.
I would rather wait for something good than get something half-assed quickly.
That's true.
I agree.
That's why they delayed Discovery the first time.
Yeah.
All right. I have to start wrapping things up because my wife is making noises towards me for hogging the living room and dining room for so long. I do want to point out that people that hated on Discovery and said that it wasn't Star Trek and that they wouldn't pay for Trek, but they would watch the Orville instead, I'd like you to have a big old glass of shut up, because starting in season 3, you're going to have to pay for the Orville because it's going to be on Hulu. And as the story goes, they couldn't make season 3 happen in time for the 2019-2020 season. It was supposed to hit Fox in January or February. So Fox took it off the schedule. And since Disney now owns Fox and they also own a majority stake in Hulu, they just said, well, we'll just make it a Hulu original and we'll put it on there and you can have more time, so it'll be out late 2020. But, hey, I'm an Orville fan. The Orville is a good show. But it's not Star Trek. And if you were watching the Orville just because you didn't want to pay for Star Trek, now you get your comeuppance.
But who knows? With being part of Fox, which is now owned by Disney, and Disney's moving over to Hulu, maybe they can use some of that hot Disney money and buy up some old scripts for Space 1999. They can adapt those.
They must be running out of Star Trek scripts by now.
Yeah, because they've been adapting those plenty. Woo. Boy.
All right, that's all I got. Does anybody else want to chime in before I close things out?
No.
Okay. All right. We will be back soon because Star Trek Las Vegas is coming up, I think, next week. So I'm sure that they've saved some morsel for that convention. So if anything is announced, we will come back and do a show and talk about it.
Nothing else, Shatner's got to piss off some more people. He hasn't done it for a few weeks.
So keep an eye on our Facebook group. At Star Trek Las Vegas, if you want to have your picture taken with William Shatner and Kate Mulgrew at the same time, it's going to cost you like $350. If you want to have your picture taken on the bridge of the Enterprise by yourself with nobody else there, it's like $100. Rick got to do that for free.
Well, I had to drive.
You had to drive
miles,
there. But you were doing that anyway. So. All right. So thanks everybody for coming. Virginia, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And Scott, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for letting me share my sad tale of watching the trailer and weeping.
I didn't weep, but I will not say that I didn't become a little verklempt.
Trust me, I guarantee I openly wept alone in this room for all 4 of us.
Rick, thank you for being here as well.
My pleasure. Live long and prosper, all y'all.
And everybody keep an eye on our Facebook group because whenever a new episode comes out, we'll announce it there. Otherwise, subscribe to the show on any of the podcast places that you get your podcasts, and stay tuned, and our announcer will tell you where all you can you can find us. And thank you for listening. Until next time, engage.
That made me smile when he did that.
Except he sounded more like engage. You know, he had a look on his face when he said it too. He had like the smirk on his face. He's like, "Yeah, they're gonna love it when I say this. Engage."
Oh yeah, that was exactly what I was
Fuck
going
yeah.
through. So.
Yeah.